Outside or inside under a tunnel, November is the month in between the months of when the weather is nice outside, it feels like summer inside, whereas if it is cool, it can get very cold. We are at the beginning of winter, so caution is advised. Under a tunnel in the month of November, if the weather permits, it is especially important to ventilate it well to prevent the temperature from rising too high inside. Let's take an example. If you have sown, as here, young turnips, if the temperature is very hot and very confined, the stems will elongate, and as soon as it gets cold, they will not withstand the first frosts. The same goes for other plants that remain inside, such as tomatoes and peppers. There are always some good leftovers. If there is a lack of air, there is a risk of rot. In this section of the tunnel, there are still a few tomatoes left. Tomatoes that continue to ripen. There is a bit of sunshine. Sometimes it disappears. The temperature is quite high. Somehow they manage to turn red. And then, in other areas of the tunnel, I sowed peas in clusters instead of tomatoes. And these peas that start to develop with the heat and the cold, but at the foot of these legumes, there are also Adventists who take advantage of the weather, slightly. So, I advise you to carefully remove them by hand as they grow. As you can see, during this period, if there are cloudy spells, a bit like today, when there is sun and then no sun, well, the temperatures can suddenly rise under the tunnel. And then at night, it can get cool. Then something quite incredible happens. Some plants do not appreciate at all the temperature swings when it is hot during the day and cool at night. This is the case for squashes and zucchinis. They turn white. The foliage turns white. So I want to tell you that once the foliage is completely white, you should pull them out and put them in the compost, and you can replace them with something else. However, incredible things also happen under a tunnel. During this same period, if the squashes and zucchinis disappear, the melons and cucumbers, there is another family of plants that withstands these temperatures as long as they do not freeze at night. These are the peppers, eggplants, and tomatoes. Look, if you want to extend the ripening of the peppers, if you have some peppers left in the ground outside and there is a risk of frost, you can lift them with a spade and bring them under your tunnel. Those same peppers you have can also be placed in a pot and moved inside the house afterwards. In October, I had sown some legumes under a mulch, under wood chips. Well, now these legumes are doing well, but at the base of these legumes, there is a plant that is starting to grow. So, it's not a weed, it's a good herb, an herb that smells like anise. In fact, it's fennel. And remember, in June, I specifically mentioned fennel, the benefit of having this type of plant that attracts insects inside the tunnel. Well, here we go again. The fennel is under my tunnel, and in the spring I am already assured of having new plants that will help attract pollinating insects. Throughout the entire summer period, starting from June, July, August, October and November, you noticed that you had vegetables that were performing very well and developing nicely under your tunnel, such as eggplants. Well, these eggplants, if they are not hybrids, you can keep the seeds and put them in small coffee bags. Hang them under your tunnel. The advantage of the tunnel is that it is dry in the upper part, and with the heat, it will allow for good seeds. This can be done just as well with tomatoes or peppers. If the purpose of a tunnel is to grow vegetables in the ground, one can also use the framework as a drying rack. So, let's take the example. If you have some champagne flowers that you were very pleased with throughout the summer, once again this summer, well, you will pick them. They are blueberries, dahlias, cosmos. You will hang them under this tunnel and you will keep the seeds throughout the winter period, and in the spring you will be able to sow them again in your garden. I remind you that November is the in-between month where it can be warm and cold, so be careful as it can also freeze very strongly outside. If you have garden hoses, don't forget to drain them. I'll meet you in December to take stock of all the plants growing under the tunnel. And don't forget that in November, later, the days start to get longer.